meeting on November 28th, 2023. The public can also access this meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington High School Building Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV, and audio recordings are being made. This meeting of the Burlington High School Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this meeting this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on screen in advance and verbally once you're identified to speak. We request that you please turn on your camera. Comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. You can access this meeting with code 2333020. 4997, and the password is Burlington. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the next item up is we have the lovely Amy Warfield here, our town clerk, and she's going to swear in the BHS School Building Committee members. And for those of you who are not able to attend in person, you will receive a letter in the mail about how to get sworn in. So I just wanted to make sure anyone who couldn't make it knows that you can still get sworn in. Thank you, Amy. We should probably just swear in just the voting members. Correct, yes. So all voting members, you need us to tell us what you want us to do. Voting members need to stand. Raise your right hand. We'll do it all together. Together, you'll put in your name. I state your name. I do solemnly swear. That I will faithfully and impartially. Discharge and perform. All the duties incumbent upon me. As a member of the Burlington High School Building Study Committee. According to the bylaws of the town. And the laws of the Commonwealth. Congratulations.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And being on top of us for this.
No problem. Okay. What I'd like to do is just quickly go through the room and do the introductions of people who are in the room, just what your position is and your name, and then we'll have the Dorn Whittier folks do the same. I'm going to start with Bob.
Bob Cuna, Director of Operations, School Committee, Burlington Public Schools.
And Neil Guanci, Maintenance Department Manager, Burlington School.
Hi, Lisa Chen, Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, here for Teaching and Learning at Burlington Public Schools.
Christopher Campbell, parent of a Burlington Public School student.
Doug Davison, Ways and Means Committee.
Jeremy Brooks, School Committee Member.
Nicole Kasha, School Business Manager.
Chris Monaco, School Committee Member.
Catherine Bond, School Committee Member.
Martha Simon, School Committee Member.
We'll wait for you guys. So we'll go Wendy.
Wendy Cherwinski, Chemistry Teacher.
Melissa Massardo, School Committee Member.
Gail Pinkham, Burlington Parent.
Eric Conti, Superintendent.
And then who do we have online? It looks like I can see Joe. I can't see all the names. So why don't we start with Joe?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Adebato. I'm the Director of Counseling at the high school.
And is there Laura?
Yep, Laura Maida.
Yeah, I can't see.
I'm Laura Maida, Special Education Teacher at the high school.
And it looks like Mark.
Yep. Hi, Mark Sullivan, High School Principal.
And it looks like Mimi.
Yes. Mimi Bix Highland, Burlington Parent and
And did I miss anyone, Christine?
No, that's Christina and Martha. Yep.
Okay. Like I said, I can't see all the last names. So again, why don't we go ahead and have the Door and Whittier folks introduce themselves. You've got a nice slide up here we can all look at.
Sure. So this represents sort of the organizational chart for our team here, starting with myself. I'm Mike Burton. I'll be the project director.
Good evening. My name is Terry Hartford. As you can see on the chart, I'll be the day-to-day project manager on this job.
Steve was unable to come tonight. He did have a conflict, but you will be seeing him moving forward.
And I'm Christina Delangelo, project manager with Dorn Whittier.
Rachel Rincon, assistant project manager.
And there's a couple other folks still lingering on vacation. Michael Cox, he'll be the project manager of controls, and also John Albright, who's another project manager. And then we also have a couple of, not on the OPM side of the business, we do architecture and OPM. There's a couple of folks that I had highlighted at our interview that I think may be relevant for this phase that we're in. That's David Mentor, who's our code and sustainability expert, and also Jason Boone, who's our educational program reviewer. So that's a little bit about our team.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. The next item is we were asked to put together a mission statement. Again, our lovely Amy Warfield said that we really should do that. So I ran this mission statement past the voting members, and then I also had legal counsel look at it. So legal counsel has also approved of what I'm about to read, and then we'll hopefully vote on this. The mission of the Burlington High School Building Committee is to ensure a feasibility process that will produce educationally sound, environmentally sustainable, and fiscally responsible options for the Burlington High School site. Additionally, the School Building Committee is charged with proactively engaging the community throughout the study for the purpose of informing and soliciting input. The School Building Committee has final authority on all projects' decisions to be recommended and confirmed by the school committee and presented to the town of Burlington. The Burlington School Committee is comprised of, and we have a list of all the residents and school town officials and who the voting members are, for those of you who may not be able to see what was written. So do I have a motion?
I would move to approve the Burlington High School School Building Committee mission statement.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, so I'm going to say all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? And the chair is in favor. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 0. Okay. Next item up, excuse me, is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. And I think we have 2 sets that we need to approve. So may I have a motion for the September 14th, 2023 minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Oh, somebody's hand's raised.
Whoops. Who? Hold on, all in favor?
There are a couple of errors in the September 14th minutes. My attendance is not noted, so if that could please be included. And for the November 2nd meeting, there is an error in attendance. There was a teacher who was present. I don't believe her name is listed. And Mr. Campbell was not there, but he is listed, and my name was misspelled. There is no D at the end of my name.
Ah, okay. So we shall go ahead and vote on the September 14th, 2023 minutes with the changes that were suggested. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And so that's 700. And November 2nd, approval of the minutes with the changes suggested.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, and there are no abstentions, and the chair is in favor, so that's 700. Okay.
So, Catherine, just a quick question. Do you want me to amend those minutes? Because those were originally done by you. I'm happy to do it.
Well, since you're here, I don't see that Mary Ann is attending, so if you don't mind.
Yeah, no
and we can
problem.
try and find out the names.
So
Mimi,
that-
Mimi, you're the one who had mentioned the changes, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you mind sending an email out with those corrections to me, and then I can forward them? Just so we don't miss anything?
Sure.
I appreciate that.
The teacher who participated, I'm not sure she was the chemistry teacher, so I don't know her name.
Yeah, it's Wendy. We'll make sure that Wendy gets on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the second.
Yeah.
Well, it was.
Yeah, so the
Wasn't all of you.
yeah, we wouldn't have had, yeah. So we'll make those amendments.
Right, that's the.
All right, as required. Yep, thank you.
Okay.
So
then-
just on the OPM contract, so I think we, were fortunate enough to get the call on November 8th. Since then, we've had some discussions with Nicole, and the contract that was advertised was a typical MSBA contract, which includes a lot of language about things that we, quite frankly, won't be doing. So we're fine with it as is. We recommended that basically a memorandum of understanding go along with that. And so currently, town council is working on that MOU. In addition to that MOU, we had a discussion when we originally kind of coordinated this meeting. We were hoping the ultimate goal here tonight was to approve the designer RFS, because that's what we want to get going here. And so that is still in review with town council, so we're not going to be looking for a motion on either the OPM contract or the designer RFS tonight. Pending receipt of that from town council, that'll be in order for next business. So any questions on that?
Nope. Oh, Dr. Conti.
For the RFS, what's essentially the timeline? Because this is, we don't need to wait for any approvals by MSBA, right? So we get it back from town council, we see it, we hold a meeting, we approve, then what happens from there?
So if we want, I think we can skip the next slide, because I think this was on here for us to really confirm that we knew everybody on the committee and who was the voting members. I'll just leave it up, maybe we'll leave it up there for a moment, let people put eyes on it and make sure everything looks good, but I don't think we need to spend a lot of time with this.
Yeah, I think you got the list that we had, that Bob sent and I sent, and
Yeah, so I think we're clear.
yeah, I think so too.
So this was a timeline that we had put together, assuming that we were going to be voting tonight. Nicole, I don't know if you've had any feedback from town council on when you think they may be.
Tomorrow.
Excellent. So if we got that back to, so again, the goal was to try and get that approved tonight. Maybe what we do is elect a smaller group to be okay to approve that tomorrow, so we don't need to reconvene the entire group. If we were able to do that, we could stick with this timeline.
Which is the.
Why don't we just?
And that,
I'm fine with that.
yeah, that allows us.
Can we
then-
vote to approve it pending town council? Is that something we could do?
And just
Are you
to,
okay with
to
that?
give people some clarity as to what's being done, in each of the two contracts and the RFS, there's references to the authority, which is the MSBA. That just needs to be removed. Apart from that, the contract is remaining the same. So it's really, for our contract, it was this MOU that Mike mentioned. We were like, look, let's just recognize that we're not going to be doing things that the authority requires. With the next contract with the designer, that's between the town and the designer, and we thought that it was best that council removes the references to that, so that, frankly, I didn't make the mistake. But the contracts are remaining the same, just like what you have at the other building. So if we could make that motion and get the contract tomorrow and somehow get approval, we can stick with the schedule.
Can I just ask a quick question? Sorry to interrupt.
Mrs.
but,
Monaco, hold on one second. I'm sorry, Mr. Kina?
Just in particular to Terry, when you're talking to Mike, I know you look to the board, but if you can talk into the mic
Oh,
so
right,
the people at
sorry.
home can hear, and if you need to, maybe
Yeah.
put the mic on the side.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard for the people online to hear.
I'll get better.
Okay, and Ms. Monaco.
I have a question for Nicole. As it was presented to town council, are you comfortable with it? So if they approve it, is it good to go?
So they were making the changes. I told them, like, the situation, that we weren't currently proceeding with MSBA, and they're making the edits and returning it to us.
So if I made a motion to approve, subject to town council's changes, are you good with that?
Sure.
I could do it.
What am I making a motion to approve exactly?
I think if you go to the next page, you could say motion to approve the designer RFS pending town council changes submitted on
Okay.
29
So I move
November.
that we approve the designer RFS, subject to any changes that are made by town council.
You want to second that?
Second.
Thank you, Melissa. All in favor? Any discussion?
Just a quick discussion. Originally, we talked on slide 7 about the OPM contract as well. So do we need to include both of those in that motion, or just the designer?
Two separate
I mean,
motions.
I'm fine if we wait till next time. I mean, we're here tonight without
Yeah,
a
no worries.
contract. I'm more interested
Wanna
in getting
clarify,
the
that's all.
designer
Yeah, I'm good with
going.
it.
And I think on that point, you had given Nicole the authority to enter into the contract. So I don't think that's necessary one way or the other with respect to us, just to, as a point of
Okay, thank you.
clarity.
Excellent. Okay, so
There's Mimi,
we
I think,
have
has a
a
hand.
motion and first and a second. All
Mimi
in-
has her hand up.
Is there a hand up? Hands down?
Yeah, Mimi has her hand up.
Mimi,
Any questions?
Are you all set?
my apology. Nope, I'm sorry about that.
All right, just want to make sure. All right, then, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the chair is in favor,
go
so
to the
that's
timeline.
700.
So we've gone back to this slide here, and Dr. Conti, I just want to educate everyone here as to what this process is. It is very similar to what you just went through with hiring of the OPM. So we will place an advert in the Central Register on Thursday. That will get published next Wednesday. I would like to propose having a site tour with any potential designers. I suggested the 13th. To me, it's really important that we get this done before the holiday breaks, so that the sooner we can do it, allowing enough time for the designers to have somebody come. So that's about a week, which we think is realistic. So Bob, assuming, yeah, you're good with that. So that's the date we would do with that. Typically, we would look to give designers about 4 weeks to put together a proposal. There's a certain holiday that's in there and New Year's. We feel that it's probably best to give them an extra week. That is what gives us applications due to us on the 8th of January, looking to give the committee, and I think that's a point that I want to raise here as to who's going to review this. You had about 11 people that did it for the OPMs. I think if we can identify a group now that wants to be a part of that selection committee, that would be great. The designer proposals are similar to the OPM. They're probably going to be a little more, they should have more content, so with respect to what the options are and what the designers think. So we can talk about that, but shortlist firms on January 17th, designer interviews on the 25th, which I think is, Catherine will talk about how that differs with the date, but if those dates work, you know, we could look to have a design firm on board under contract by the end of January, which is the schedule that we kind of put forth in our interview. If we can stick to that, that would be fantastic.
Right, and we had already discussed that there's a conflict on January 25th, so we're probably going to have to reschedule that one. So you're hoping that we can maybe, excuse me, identify a selection group this evening. So I think last time we asked people to hold their hands up, I think, and we took some notes. So I have Chris Campbell. Doug. Jeremy.
The guy across from me.
Melissa. Martha, hold on. Whoops, me. Martha. Wendy, hold on. We should have these in alphabetical order, it'd make it easier. We got Wendy, I'm sorry, could everyone hold your hands up again, please?
Neil.
Yeah, Neil, I gotta get Neil. Where is Neil? There's Neil. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And was there anyone online? No hands? So we have 9 people. Who's
Is that
is it Mimi?
Yes, I have my hand.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Mimi.
You're welcome.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 10 people. Did I miss anyone? All right. I will send you those names.
Perfect. That would be that would be appreciated. Yeah, and just so those 10 or so people understand the time frame, January 8th to the 17th, that'll be the workload period, just to plan accordingly. As Terry said, the packets from the designers are typically a little bit more robust than what comes from the OPM. There's a lot of certifications and other, not disrespectfully, but fluff to the people that are reviewing. We're going to probably get those 10 folks together. We'll walk you through a little kind of tutorial. We'll do all kind of the fact checking. We'll do all the technical analytics, and what the 10 people on that committee are going to do is focus on Section 10, which is essentially what they think about the project. And so that'll kind of shorten it up depending on the number of proposals that we receive, which we hope is a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Massardo.
I just have a couple questions about the process. Do you expect very similar to an elementary school project, fewer, more, longer? It's a bigger school, so I imagine it's a little more in depth.
Typically, so timing is a big factor. Thinking about when we did Fox Hill compared to now, I think we're in a better position.
I literally think Fox Hill is also over Christmas.
It was like
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not necessarily time of year, but more about like the market conditions and where we were at then. I do expect a better result from that perspective. I also expect a better result as it is a high school. And so, we're hopeful that, potential designers are already aware of this job and are going to be watching this video tonight. So this is our free chance to advertise kind of what we feel like advertising without getting it in the RFS, which leads us to the next couple of slides, which I think Terry's going to walk you through. It's not necessarily for you. It's all the things that you already know about your site and your school, but it's things that we want the designers to understand and take into account when they're working on their Section 10s.
Yes, Dr. Conti.
First of all, I got a text that Joe and Mark cut out online, and they wanted to be on the selection committee. So I know you sent 10 names. Would you add Joe and Mark? Is that Mark? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Conte. Joe and I both having technical issues, but thank you.
I'm at your service, Mr. Sullivan.
I texted Bob too, just in case you didn't get it.
All right. Always have a backup plan. I got that, so that's not a bad thing.
All right, you guys need to get my cell phone number. There, you have to go through Dr. Conti.
Any of the Dore and Whittier folks, but Mike or Terry, from the processes that we've gone through with the MSBA, there was a lot of pre-qualification conversations that happened. There was the designers, I remember, had to explain to the board that they had the time and the capacity, how many other projects they had. Are you all going to help us with sort of in that role more so than the MSBA? I know we don't have to wait for them, which is great.
Right.
But I also don't know the designer's qualifications or,
Yep.
or wouldn't be able to pre-screen anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with the now 12-person committee, basically we're going to point out a couple of things that we think are good for this committee as a whole to understand. And, similar to going through OPMs, it's obviously the experience of the firm. Have they done jobs like this? How many complicated new tight site high schools have they worked on? We're going to have to be looking at multiple scenarios of ad renos. And as Terry's going to speak to in a moment, there are some complexities here that these designers are going to need to understand. It's going to be really important for them to show that history as a firm. To me, that's first and foremost. Second is the skill set of the team itself. I don't always necessarily look at the name of the firm, but the people that are assigned to it, right? What's their experience? And so it's the experience of the firm, experience of the team. Capacity is obviously a major concern. And then, we may, based on these next couple of slides, come up with a couple of unique individual questions that we want to ask them. We're not limited to 5 questions. If you remember going through the designer selection panel, we could only ask them 5 questions because the MSBA only gives them 25 minutes to make a very important decision. We may want to give them an hour. Just an idea. We may want to go a little bit longer. It depends on how many we get, and we can work through that. But I would recommend give them an hour. Let's ask them. Let's pick, 5, 10 questions that are important to this committee, and we're going to do it the way we want to do it.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Simon, do you have any comment? Okay. All righty. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Right. So actually, I don't like this.
Educational programming?
No, the couple of the slides that I'm just going to hit go on to this one. So one of the
Can you
things
just tell me what that one
one before?
Yeah.
So this is like an overlay map that is provided by GIS and will be through the assessors and the various different agencies. And so what you see here is a whole bunch of things that create this challenging situation that we have here. This is obviously the high school site. The greens and blues represent a whole host of different either wetland streams, things that are unique to this site. That my eyesight's not great. There should be a topography in this as well. And basically it demonstrates, if you turn the page, I tried to just kind of summarize some of the things that we're all aware of because you guys come here all the time, but this is a unique site that has, single access entry. It's in a residential neighborhood. The building itself has a number of unique features due to the topography and the elevation changes, where the floodplain is. There is a considerable amount of ledge, as you see as you drive into the building, and all of those characteristics of this site are going to need to be accounted for with whatever option we eventually choose, whether or not that, as Mike said, is a reno, a new site. It's very challenging, and I don't think that is a surprise to you, and it certainly will not be a surprise to a designer once they come here and they learn more about the project. But we just felt it was really important to make sure that folks know what this site is all about. So that was the purpose of these 2 slides, really to make sure that I had a bunch of head noddings like, yep, that is our site, and then to just kind of, as Mike said, advertise it to prospective designers.
Not as easy as Fox Hill, for sure. In terms,
So does that,
all right. Did you
that
want to
answer
go
your
on to the next slide then?
Yep.
So one of the things we spoke about at the interview was, we get the sense that people want to go fast. And so we talked about a couple of different ideas that we had that would help us do that. And Dr. Conti, after having lived through this recently, understands it's a bit of a lift and takes some doing. And we wanted to propose offering, between now and the end of January or whenever the designer walks through the door. I had, back on the organizational chart at the beginning, I had mentioned those two other gentlemen as sub-consultants. We just wanted to offer Jason services. If there's anything that Jason can do between now and end of January to help sort of scrub, vet, answer any initial questions that you may have. Again, having gone through this recently, you're a seasoned vet by now, but again, Jason's services are there, and we just wanted to offer that out there. And so I did speak to Jason on the way down here. He's happy to have an initial phone call, kind of talk to you a little bit, hit some high-level things, and then eventually, if you want to schedule some discussions, we're happy to do that.
Mike, I think that'd be great. I think Mr. Sullivan has also volunteered to help with the programming document as well, so.
Perfect, because there's two critical things that once the designer comes through the door, there's just two major activities that they're doing. They're learning the ed program, right, which takes time, and then they're learning about this building, and they're going to have all their consultants crawling through this thing, reviewing any documentation that the town may have. Architects, structural engineers, electrical, mechanical, they're going to need to know everything they can about this building, and those two activities in tandem can take anywhere from 2 to 3 months, right? And so to the extent that there's information available that's easily accessible, Bob's all set. Any initial questions on the ed programming, and the ed program for a high school is obviously different, and so there are some unique elements of it, and so that's where Jason, I think, might be helpful.
And because this is not MSBA, normally in the program I wouldn't put non-school related programming, but we have non-related school programming in this building, so we would include that in the programming document. So our local cable access TV station is housed here. We have a preschool here. We have our collaborative offices here. So again, it should be a description of how we use our current space.
Yep, and that is also something that we touched on in the interview, and as we were preparing, for it, we know that, this committee is going to have to make those decisions, who stays and who goes, right? And so ultimately, the decision of who stays and who goes is going to be important for two reasons. One is, if we're doing an ad reno, can some of these programs be temporarily relocated to offer swing space within the building? We don't know. That's going to need to be a consideration. Do they want to be in the building full time? If we were to do a new building. So those are some other key decisions that this group is going to need to make. And again, it's short term and long term. And so we do have a slide for swing space, but we prefer this to just be a discussion anyway. The other big consideration that we're going to touch on, but we might as well touch on it now, is that we've heard discussions that when it comes to swing space, which we're going to have to explore as we're going through reno and ad reno options, not a lot of room on site for modulars, and modulars aren't cheap. Nobody wants to learn out of a modular for their high school career. Office space, I'm sure there's office space here. Maybe that's an opportunity. There's going to be a need, a cost-benefit analysis on what is that space, going to cost in a rental opportunity. So swing space is going to be a huge deal here. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to sort of lift the hood, search the souls a little bit. Are there any other opportunities? And we know from Fox Hill, not a lot of empty buildings laying around. But, things may have developed. There may be new opportunities. And so looking at that is going to be very important. And the sooner that this committee can get ahead on ed program, non-ed program, what truly are swing space options, that's only going to allow us to go faster.
Thank you, Ms. Simon.
I'm I'm sort of interested in knowing, it's my understanding that a lot of staff, for the Fox Hill project, a lot of staff under Dr. Conti's direction spent a lot of time going over the educational program. And also in terms of looking at sort of the MSBA process, we don't have to follow that, but we did apply. I won't tell you how many times. So are we going to be able to use some of that educational programming? Dr. Conti, this is probably for you. Is it going to have to be a whole new document? And if so, I want to thank all the staff that's already done it for the Fox Hill project and all the people that are going to be involved for the high school project.
No, the level of detail from the statement of interest to the program documents are very different. So
Different animal.
this would be how many, how much time per week, what's the schedule, do they get science, art, social studies, what's the programming, we have a computer science, whatever. So we would be describing that, and the people who manage those programs are actually really excited about talking about them. So I think that's, I'm not worried that they'll be able to do it very quickly. And we'll organize it the same way we would for the program document for the MSBA. I think that's just the easiest way to do it.
Well, thank you. And thanks to all the people who are going to put in all that time.
So Christina, I jumped around on you on the slides. What was the last one that we should have been on?
I think you did.
Okay, so we touched on that.
Yeah, I think I'll just add this because I probably should have put 14 after 12. And just to reiterate the point about non-educational programming, if you go to slide 14, we know we don't have swing space modulars, but what I listed here was just these are broad numbers in terms of what square footage these programs are taking up, which is, to the tune of 35,000 square feet, which is it's a considerable amount of space. And so that just to keep in your minds, is there the potential to move somebody either temporarily, permanently, so that we can continue to utilize that as swing space? And so that's just something that we're going to have to consider. You're going to have to consider. So, and then I think we can just go back to sustainability, which I'm happy to take. So, for the benefit of those of you that weren't part of the interview, and I think some of the experiences that our team has had at other locations, identifying and discussing sustainability goals at the outset before the designer comes on board, and certainly well before you start picking preferred schematics and all of that stuff, is to really have a fulsome and honest discussion about what are the sustainability goals for this committee and for the town. And I know, some of the questions that we got during the interview highlighted that, and that came through in all of the interviews, frankly. And one of the things that we would like to propose doing, I don't know if you've heard of the green engineer, Chris Schaffner. He's kind of a pioneer, I would say, in terms of sustainability, working with public facilities, schools, in terms of what can and cannot be done, and what options that are out there for us in all of the options. And so it really comes down to a couple different things. And Mike, you're far better at the EUI target setting discussion than I am. But it's really, I've heard I want all electric. Okay, I want to make sure that we keep the solar panels and we have PV and that maybe we're doing wells and all of those things are out there. And as a committee, if we can come up with an EUI target and we tell the design firms, this is where our path to compliance with the stretch code, which many of you may not know, these are all sort of compliance code related things. But if we can make some decisions and give guidance up front, then the designer has goalposts and they're meeting our needs, as opposed to they go off and do their thing and then they come back and we say, oh, but we would like, and then it's too late, right? And so I think one of the things we're going to talk about working groups, but the sustainability working group would be great to have so that we can discuss and figure out what's important, then bring that to the entire group, which is what all of our working groups do, and then move forward on that basis. So that was the purpose of this slide, and so happy to have a discussion or answer any questions. I just know that this is critically important to members of the group and the town, and it is important, and we're increasingly finding that this is the time to have this discussion and start it, and so a little long-winded there, but.
Ms. Monaco, and then I'll go with Ms. Massardo.
We've been looking at the high school for a long time, and it seems to me that, unlike Fox Hill, where we clearly needed a new building, I think at the high school, we really have no clue. We don't know if we need a new wing, a new building, we don't know what we need. And I think at this point in time, sustainability issues are really goals, because this place is a mass of concrete, and if it turns into a rehab plus maybe a new wing here and a new wing there and God knows what, I'm not sure we can really set it in stone at this point in time. The reason we need you and the reason we need a designer is because we need some ideas, what can be done, building blocks, basic. Well, you could do this, or you could do this, or, and
Completely agree.
As far as being in a hurry, I don't feel like I'm in a hurry, because we have to get Fox Hill through, and that's important to make sure we get it and get it funded. I think what we need at the high school is a very methodical look at what all of the possibilities are. And sustainability at this point, sure, I'd love it to be, all these great sustainable things, but we don't know what we're even capable of doing yet.
But it is helpful, and I don't disagree with the words you said, but what I can tell you is that even if it's a repair, and let's say you want this thing to have ground source heat pump, right? I'm just picking something out of the air. It can still be done.
Drill it through all the concrete.
It can. It's
I
all outside the building.
believe
But
you.
so like, let's just say, and I'm just making things up. Let's just say, all right, we want solar, we want ground source heat pump, right? Even in repair options, in ad reno options, and in new options, if those are goals that are important to this community, the sooner the designer knows about it as we're going through these options, we're thinking that if we come to an option that doesn't make sense because of sustainability goals, we're still going to bring it forward and say, well, we can't achieve this goal.
As long as we know that we're talking about goals, not.
Exactly correct. And it is a goal, and it's great to have goals, and sometimes you hit every one.
If it doesn't work, so be it.
Bingo.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Massardo?
I'm just wondering, for efficiency's sake, I think like 3/4 of us are also on Fox Hill, and we've had a lot of sustainability. We have a sustainability working group with community members, and I think the community goals should be similar, or if not the identical, between the two buildings. So we've done a lot of EUI goal setting, ground source heat pump. We had a nice in-depth discussion of kind of some of the chill beams is all I remember, but there was discussion. So I'd love if we could maybe just have more of a school building sustainability working group, save some time. I think, anyway, I think the goals should be similar across the projects. Again, how they get implemented is going to be vastly different, but I think we're going to be needing to hit targets. We're going to needing to hit looking for the IRA incentives on both projects. So I think they will probably be similar. I know Martha's recruited a number of community members who I imagine are invested in both projects. So hopefully we can gain some efficiencies there.
Well, I think what can happen is we'll put together the working group and probably take the Fox Hill document and use that as a base, and then decide if that works for the high school, which might save a lot of time. Right. Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I wanted to also mention, I don't see that there's any one thing set in stone, but I appreciate you hearing that there's a lot of interest in making sure, and I appreciate that you because my understanding in the work I've done over the last few years is that starting from ground zero is how you create sustainable buildings that aren't going to be, have to be retrofitted 20 years from now when the requirements are different. And I think that it's important for us to have those things looked at from the beginning. And I also think that there's often conversations where people will assume it's going to be harder, and they'll assume it's going to be more expensive. And actually, as we saw with the Fox Hill Building Committee process, the geothermal wells ended up being the least expensive option because there are incentives, and I mean, there's certain upfront costs and other costs, but with the upfront incentives from the IRA and from Mass Save, it's not always. So I really appreciate that we go into this with an open mind and look at what all the options are, try to set the goals that we think are manageable, what we are hoping for. And then when we see the numbers come back, we can change those goals if we need to, but knowing that they're not automatically going to be harder or more expensive, and that we really look at them all, because there's so much has changed in the last 5 years, both cost and technology. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation right from the beginning.
Any other? Oh, yes, Jeremy.
Yeah, I would also advocate we benchmark the EUI goals from Fox Hill. It'll help give us a little bit high level scope, and then we won't waste as much time on building options like we had 9 or 10 options for Fox Hill, where we were in 3 to 4 meetings and we knew that weren't going to meet the scope of the project. And having that high level scope early will help refine that process and get us options that really work better right from the get-go, and give us less options to kind of dig through.
Is there anybody online who has a question or a comment? I can't see. Bob? We good? Oh, yes, Mr. Cuna.
Can you all, everyone in this committee, when they speak on the mic, do me a favor? I'm just noticing that a lot of phones are like right here, and when we're unmuted, we're getting all that tick feedback. And then when we mute, it goes away. Please, thank you.
All right, so there are no other comments or questions online. So do you guys want to move on to the next slide?
So we just wanted to touch base regarding the project website and show you, obviously, the Fox Hill Building Committee website that Dorn Whittier has been working on and has developed from the beginning of the project. We've made a lot of changes along the way based off of the feedback that we have received from the committee and the community. But ultimately, what we did discuss with you at our interview is that we're not in the direction to build websites necessarily. That's not really our job. But we have reached out to a couple different firms, one that specializes in public relations and communications that might be able to assist us with this building committee website. And so ultimately, our goal is to come back to you at our next building committee meeting with a proposal from that group and review and discuss maybe some examples of other projects that they've done that are similar to school projects like this. And so we just wanted to touch base on the feedback that we heard from our interview and make sure that you know that we're working through it right now.
Yes.
Not a proposal, like a fee proposal, a proposed website. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. I do have a question. I know you're presenting, this group to us. Is there any way that they could attend a meeting so we can ask some questions? It could be remote or
absolutely.
whatever. But
that's the intention. When I spoke to this particular firm that I'm pretty keen on, but we expect their proposal in the next day or two. They probably work with town council for all I know, which is why we don't have it yet. But absolutely, I would have them come in, and it's, I've actually, since the interview, changes have been made to this site that I think have, from what I saw before, have improved it. I think the piece that I took away from the interview was utilizing the site as more of a communication tool, and that's a public relations function, and that's a different different ask, I think, from just a website. And I think that's what we'd like to bring to the table and see if there's some interest in pursuing that.
Right. And I was going to say it's a communication tool, but also easy to find things. You know, everything was there,
Right.
but it wasn't always easy to just instinctively or intuitively find something. And I think that's kind of a need.
Next on the agenda, we wanted to talk to you about obviously working groups and SBC goals. So I know there's a lot of familiar faces in this room from the Fox Hill building project, but there are a lot of new faces that we're not familiar with from the town itself. And so what we'd like to do is get to know you, send out a questionnaire to this full building committee, and understand what working groups that you would like to be a part of and participate in, to the discussion that we had about sustainability and many other goals that you might have regarding the project itself. As well as we want to identify some important goals for this committee and for the project itself. And so similar to what we did in Fox Hill, I know some of you do remember that, but again, some new faces, and I want to make sure that everyone is involved. And to Martha's point and to Melissa's point, yes, we have established a sustainability working group, but I'm sure there's additional members from this group and many other people that would like to be part of some of those working groups that we want to establish right away. So that's our next step following today's meeting, is sending out that questionnaire to the full building committee to provide some insight into what's important to you and what you'd like to participate in as far as the project itself. The next slide is just an example of some goals that we've identified from another project in our past. This is from the Manchester Memorial Elementary School project. And you can see some key words that were identified from the building committee members that we wanted to ensure that we carried throughout the project and identified when making key decisions along in the project itself.
Anybody have any questions or comments on that? Okay. So we can move on.
The goal would be, you know, once we get that out the door, again, it's going to ask some things, and which one of these groups you'd like to attend. You know, once we set a date for the next meeting, the goal would be to kind of get the results back by then, and we'll have something to report out to you all with.
Excellent, thank you. All right, then, any other topics that we did not anticipate? Anybody online have a question or a comment, or anyone in the room? Mr. Campbell.
I guess I had one question. One of the agenda items was board members, number 8. Did we skip over that? Or was that just?
That was just confirming that we already have the 7, that the list that we had presented is accurate.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, is there anybody who wants to do public participation? I don't see anybody in the room, but anybody online? Okay. That was easy. Ms. Massardo.
Were you planning on moving public back to the beginning? I know in the past you'd
Yes.
asked for it to be in the beginning. Okay.
Yes, yep.
One at the beginning and one at the end? Same process as, okay, perfect.
Just like we did before. Yeah,
Okay,
I think
great.
that's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then you want to talk about upcoming meetings here?
Sure. So obviously we've identified a schedule for the DSP now, which is great. And I think we also have to take into account SBC meetings going forward. We would always recommend that we're having monthly meetings, which I think is important to establish ideally a consistent day of the week and a time of the month, because then people just kind of find oh, it's the third Wednesday I have school committee meeting for the high school building project. So that's one thing. What I would suggest in the immediate future is providing an update to folks via email just on where we are with the site visits, just to let folks know how much interest is there. And then what we were going to do is to come up with a schedule to have our next meeting with this entire group in January, but pick a time that I can then consistently say it is this Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday, and I just know that there's other There's school committee meetings on Tuesdays. There's Fox Hill committee meetings on Mondays. There's community meetings with Fox Hill. We want to have a community meeting, and we'll talk about that. But I think, have you thought at all about timings? I bet you have.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you and tell you what works. At least,
Okay.
I'll work with Martha on that too. But
And when you do, I just want to make sure, what I would like to be able to do is when we have the next meeting, that we have already received proposals. So that way I can at least give the committee an update on, hey, this is what we have. If we're working through that, that's great. If you want to wait until after that, that's fine, but I will just need to work with that subcommittee to make sure we get through those. But I'm fine if you want to talk offline, and yeah, great. Perfect.
I'd rather look at calendars and kind of just coordinate and see what day works best. And again, I know what days don't work for me, but I want to make sure that,
Right, and so then the other piece that I've just put on here is a community meeting. And I know the importance of these for every school project, and frankly, for just about every project I've ever worked on in my life. The question that I have is the timing of this. Now, I can make a case that we should have a community meeting as early as January to explain the feasibility process to folks that want to understand that. I can make a case that says, let's get the designer on board so that we actually can say, this is the team and these are the options that we're considering, and then we're going to pick another time where we're going to have that second community meeting. And I just would like to get some feedback from this group just to determine what your expectations are, because I can, like I said, I can make a case for either.
well, again, I would rather have someone selected, and then we have some, because we've been talking about the high school for a long time, and I think a lot of people know what we're doing. The town is clearly given us the funding to move forward with this, and I think if we're going to have a meeting, we should have, something to share. So,
I agree with that.
Ms. Massardo?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should at least have a designer on board.
That's great.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, and I agree about the community meeting timing. Do you feel that it's important for us to have another meeting of this group before we have the designer on board, or is that kind of, other than selecting the designer and doing those interviews, is there any need for us to meet as a school building committee before we select the designer?
I do, simply because that designer meeting, that I would like to have a meeting to deal with the working groups and establishing where we are, because I will do my best, and I have been instructed by certain people that I work with to run efficient meetings. I do not want to have 3-hour meetings. That's not what we want to do. We want to be efficient, and if we can keep meetings to 60 to 90 minutes, it's worth having that discussion to give everyone a fulsome update, and then meet the next month, and then the designers are on board, or we have that update. So I would rather have multiple than wait.
Thank you. And I believe Mimi has her hand up. Is that correct?
When I had looked at the agenda before the start of the meeting, it looked like the voting member composition was item number 8, and I thought there would be opportunity to speak about this, but I know it was addressed a few minutes ago that the vote was for 7 members, and the committee seems to have moved on. But how can somebody like myself, who would like to raise an issue about the composition of the voting members, do so in an appropriate manner that honors this structure?
You can address this right now if you have a question. That's not a problem.
Thank you. So I had wanted to ask this committee to reconsider the composition of its voting members. There are a couple of conflict of interest concerns that I invite everyone to consider. To start, by asking Dr. Conti and Dr. Chen to be voting members, we are treating the employer and employee to be on parity with each other when they are not. The school committee is Dr. Conti's boss. Dr. Conti is Dr. Chen's boss. By putting Dr. Conti and Dr. Chen in this position, it is my belief that we unnecessarily put them in a political situation and remove them from an educational advisory one. I think Burlington students, parents, and taxpayers are better served by having our superintendent and assistant superintendent serve as educational advisors and not as political participants in this. So that was one point that I wanted to make and ask other folks to consider if they haven't already. The other one is that I believe that this building committee should be a study team and not an appendage of the school committee. I represent the viewpoint that Burlington taxpayers should also be represented on that voting board. And so I ask that we consider moving away from having all members of the school committee be voting members. I know that some folks may think this is a fait accompli, but I think there's room here to really think about what I'm saying, and I ask that there be some discussion about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. Anybody else want to add to that or make comments? And we'll take that into consideration. And I believe when we formed the voting group, we did mention that there might be some flexibility in adding some people as voting members. So we can, find out who has interest. I just don't want it to be 18 people, right? I want it to be a group that we're not spending 10 minutes taking votes, right? So, Mimi, I really appreciate your comments and input. Anyone else have any? Mr. Davidson?
I would just say that I think no matter what happens with the total number, to me it's important that the majority of the voting members are elected officials. I think it's hard to have someone with a vote for something that can be this important. To some degree, if really all we're talking about is the building, I can understand it. In the last building committee that you guys have gone through, I was really bothered by it when it started to look like changes in kind of the overall educational approach, when we were talking about, do we go down to fewer elementary schools and do we get rid of a neighborhood school? And that was really bothersome to me, that you might have a majority of people who aren't elected officials making a decision like that. So I would like to see that considered. In the end, the town's got to vote for financing this thing. So the voters are going to have a lot of say in this. It's just, how do we sell it? How do we put together something that they're going to approve?
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
I'd actually respectfully disagree with that, because I think when we're looking at a cross-section of our community, we want the parent participation, we want the teacher participation, but I would wholeheartedly agree with what Mimi just said. Is it's really important that it's the taxpayers that have the votes here. Dr. Conti, Dr. Chen, you bring a lot of great experience here, but I would have to also agree with what Mimi says, is it does put them in a difficult role of having to decide how they want to vote on these big decisions here in town against the school committee that does do their overall observation, at least for Dr. Conti. So I would say that we do need to consider our voting members, and as many people who have sat on the sidelines of the last school or continue to sit on the sidelines of the Fox Hill, it does become an appendage of the school committee meeting, and I don't think that's what these meetings are intended to be. We want to have a cross-section of our community that is invested, is here, and wants to have a say on what we all think is best. And if we're only picking elected officials, then we're not tapping into some of the great powers that are within our community.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Ms. Monaco?
So this is my this is my 5th building committee. And the first 3, everybody on the committee was a voting member. And the superintendent was a voting member, and the assistant superintendent was a voting member. And I think that they have a lot of knowledge that we need to include. It's really important, I believe, to have their expertise. So I don't agree with that point. But I think everybody on the committee should be a voting member, because I I know I wouldn't want to sit on a committee like this and not even have a vote. So that's how I feel. I think everyone should get a vote.
Ms. Simon?
I think that a lot of these issues that have been brought up are important issues, and it's worth having more discussion. I don't know. I wish I had like a process to suggest about it, because I do think it's important for us to think about. We could improve on what we have. This was a vote that was taken initially, and I feel like we could perhaps improve on it, and maybe people could have some time to think about it, and maybe process-wise, if Catherine's comfortable, maybe we could have it on the agenda and have people present their thinking and reasoning on it, and at the moment, it's still the 7 voting members who would vote on that, so that we wouldn't change it without a majority of that group. So I would like to have more discussion about it. I think some important issues have been raised.
Right, and I agree. And as I mentioned earlier, when we did form the voting members, we did leave it open to add additional people. I was not opposed to that from the start. So, Mimi, thank you for starting the discussion, and I think we will add that to our next meeting. And we should have the voting members vote on that, and then we'll go ahead and decide how many we think we can add. Again, I understand some people wanting everyone to be a voting member, but I think it's just when people are remote. I mean, if everyone's going to be a voting member, then I would like people to show up in person, because it's just too hard to take roll call with 18 people. That's why I'm kind of opposed to everybody. So anyway.
Can I clarify one point that I made?
Sure.
I just want to respond to Ms. Monaco. I agree with you that Dr. Conti and Dr. Chen are invaluable in terms of the input and experience that they have to offer. And it's precisely for that reason that I am suggesting that we consider not having them be voting members, so that they can truly advise based on their respective expertise and experience. But when you make somebody a voting member, then, as surely any of you who have been on these committees know, it gets very politically contentious, and people try to exert influence behind the scenes. And I think we have 2 very experienced educators and administrators who could offer even more input if they weren't put in this dynamic that I think is that where there isn't parity, even though we act as if there is, because we make them voting members. I mean, in no other industry situation do we have that I can think of offhand anyway, that kind of a dynamic. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate people chiming in with their respective opinions. I do think it's worth pursuing a little bit more and being thoughtful about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to add or have any comments? Okay.
Can I just?
Yes.
On slide 19, you'll see that schedule that we included there. That is a schedule that comes from our interview. I have not chosen to update that, primarily because I have to come up with dates for, meetings and the designer selection process. It is representative of what we are attempting to achieve. And for those of you that are on the other building committee and are familiar with the MSBA process, they use words like the preliminary design program and the preferred schematic report. Those are 2 kind of critical milestones that we are going to be looking to achieve with the designer, and the timelines that are in there. I think it's 4 to 5 months for the PDP, and then after that, an additional 3 or 4 months after that into the fall to come up with our preferred schematic report. That timing is what we are shooting for, and we will definitely be getting feedback from designers, but at the same time, we are kind of dictating the schedule, and these dates will be in the RFS so that they understand what we're looking to achieve. And so I just didn't want people to think, oh, what are these exact dates? They're not. This was from our proposal. It was included in our interview. This will be refined. And the other thing that you will start to see each month, on or about the 8th day of the month, we will issue a monthly report for you. We will have one for September, and it basically is an overview of the previous month's activities, what we have all been doing, any meetings, minutes, really anything that occurs over that month, and then there's an additional 30-day look forward, as well as an update to any schedule. And so it highlights kind of all the things that you should be aware of. If you miss a meeting, you can get the monthly report and quickly get back up to speed as to where we are.
Thank you. All right. I think the only thing left is adjournment. Anyone make a motion?
I move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We are officially adjourned.